Wait, wasn't it going to go on forever? That was a very cute song. Hey, everybody, it's Stephen Feuertries, otherwise known as Stephen Feuerstein. I have with me
Anton Nielsen. And
Anton Nielsen from Insum as well.
I love the Feuertries. That's I love
Thanks so
that.
much.
Yeah.
So I've got Anton on for a great show today, and I'm going to, as a result, minimize my ranting for this week. So I thought I'd do two things. One is show you my latest current favorite T-shirt, Make Orwell Fiction Again. See if you can figure it out. And if you think it's funny, lots of people don't seem to get it right off. And I know I always said on the show, I'm not going to do PowerPoints, but I'm going to show you one PowerPoint slide as my rant that actually applies directly to the talk we're doing today. And then I will not do any more PowerPoints. So let's show my slide.
I love the Stephen T-shirt segment. That should be every week.
So my message to all of you in terms of my general, this is like the most fundamental rant I can imagine, is less screen, more life. The more we sit in front of screens, like on our phones when we're taking walks in the forest, etc., the less we're actually living in any meaningful way. So put down your screen, even today, right now, if you decide that, this is it, I'm going to follow Stephen's advice and skip the rest of this talk, that's fine with me. Now, I said that message, less screen, more life, actually applies to what we're going to talk about today. And here's the lead-in for that, and then off we go. Life is short. We don't really want to spend all of our time in front of a screen writing our code, but we have to make a living, finish projects on time, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, one of the key things about being a great developer is getting somebody else to do most of your work for you. Let somebody else do the heavy lifting. And this applies very much so with, sometimes people rewrite built-in functions essentially, like is a string a valid number or not? And they write this long, complicated function about checking the actual contents of the string, and is there a dot or and you can just call the two-number conversion function and see if it works and let Oracle do the heavy lifting. So that I would say is the general theme. Now, why is Anton here? Anton, first of all, probably knows more about Oracle database generally than I do, probably as much about PL SQL, but Anton is really, really great at Apex. And one of the things that he brought to my attention, it's been talked about on Twitter, and there are the occasional tweets about it, but one of the things he mentioned to me recently is there's so much great PL SQL stuff inside Apex, even if you're not building Apex applications. So I brought Anton on today to kind of do a quick look through and an inspiration around all the code that exists in the Apex PL SQL libraries that we could use. So let's get started, Anton.
Sure. And Stephen, to your point, not only get somebody else to do your work, but get somebody that has already done it. These things are just sitting there waiting for you.
And it's supported by Oracle.
Yes. And that is a key element. You can go and Google stuff and then you get it, and it could be great, but you have to review it and so forth. These are all supported, validated by Oracle. You can use them. So there's a whole bunch of APIs that are just, when Apex is in your database, they're available to you. I know back and forth versions of Apex or versions of the database have by default put in Apex or not put in Apex. Hopefully going forward, they will put them in. An autonomous database, they're there, generally speaking. So you have access to these APIs, even if you're not using Apex, like you said. They do fall into three categories, though. Some of them you can just use, and we'll give a lot of those. You don't need to do anything at all to use them.
Even if you're not building you have never built an Apex app, you've never opened up Application Builder, you're just writing back in code.
You don't even have to have the builder portion installed. There's this runtime only. You can just write this with your PL SQL, nothing at all. So that's one scenario. Another scenario is some of them require that your schema be granted to a workspace. So you have to be granted to a workspace and set the workspace ID.
But not otherwise do anything with Apex.
Right. Yep. Nothing at all. And the third scenario is that you actually have to be in the context of an Apex application. Now, you can actually establish that context of an Apex application inside PL SQL. You don't actually need to be running the browser and all that kind of thing, but it's more complicated. And those things usually are interacting with application components. So they're less interesting if you're just doing this strictly from PL SQL. So you've got these three categories, and I can start by just giving some examples of what they are.
Yeah. Let's start with, if I'm not using Apex at all, I'm not building applications, what do you got for me?
Right. So first of all, I'm using the user called no Apex. If I select star from Apex workspaces, there aren't any. I have access to no Apex workspaces. It's as if Apex is only installed and I have no no workspaces at all. So, I mean, I'm going to give some really simple examples. Get initials, Apex string get initials. It gets, let me not double click. There we go. AN. Yeah, super simple. If I want 3 initials, I can, if I don't put anything there, it defaults to 2. It would only give me AI. If I want 3, I get AIN, and so on.
And before you go on, let's just look at this for a moment, because it's really interesting. When Anton showed me this, I said, oh, that's how they show the 2 initials in the cards when you're building a card report in Apex. And the point there is that one of the, we all know how great the Apex team is in terms of commitment to community and engaging and so on and so forth. But this is another way that we see the commitment. They have made public so much of what they built for themselves and documented it, so now it's supported. That's not an automatic process in Oracle. That's a serious commitment of resources. And as a result, you may not use get initials. You're going to see more stuff. But that's how these things come about, because this team is committed to helping us in every way possible. All right.
Excellent. And so, I mean, obviously this is really trivial, but if you want something more complicated, you can do a full-on grep. Now, maybe it shows that I'm
What is grep?
Right. Grep will look at a bunch of strings and match patterns and give you the pattern matching. So what I've got here is I'm saying, okay, I've got a group of strings. I want to know which one of these strings matches the regex pattern that has basically anything that ends in .sql. And my modifier of I means in case insensitive. So anything that's SQL, lowercase, mixed case, uppercase, you can see uppercase here. And so this grep, if I run this, you can see I can output right here. I got BCF123. So I got this, and this. So everything that's got that. Grep is to write a generic grep function would be a lot of work, but here it is.
And by the way, if you never heard of grep, it's from Unix and Linux environments. I just included a link in the comments. You can go learn more about it. These are the kind of things that I've avoided all my life, learning awk and grep and sed, and of course,
I fall back to them all the time because I learned them once, and 30 years ago. But the point there is you've got everything from the super simple stuff to the really powerful, complex stuff here. But one of the things that this demonstrates is this kind of cool thing right here, this Apex T varchar2. I make the mistake. I say this is a table function. It turns out it's not really a table function. Stephen can tell you the PL SQL behind this.
Well, it took a while looking at that code to figure out what we were looking at. So Apex T varchar2 is a type, which means it has a constructor function of the same name. So that's what you're referencing in line 17. You're constructing a collection of that type.
Right.
And then on line 30, you're actually just selecting from the collection.
Look at that. That's cool right there. I mean, I run into this kind of thing all the time where I want to be able to just turn a set of strings into a set of rows. So that's pretty neat. But the other thing that because this is Apex T varchar2, a lot of what Apex returns in their functions is in fact of this type. That means we can take all of this PL SQL and instead we can just select directly from this. So if we just select from that right there, we just get the rows back that fit. And now I think that's super cool, super powerful. This Apex T varchar2 type it just works out really well for being able to do these kinds of cool things. So you run this and you get back the 3 rows that match the 3 things there. Super cool way to go about it.
By the way, if you're ever needing to learn about grep strings, just go to Twitter and @ Anton Nielsen and ask him for the correct grep string for what you want to do.
Right. Yeah, I'll give you this pattern. Absolutely. And then, I mean, just to give another example, and this is another package, but it's Apex String Util find phrases. So in this case, I want this phrase. I want to see which of these phrases are in this string. So in the same way, I can use a select star. This returns that same type, and I can see that these 3 of my list actually show up in here. So apparently never does not. So these are just a few easy samples of things that exist without doing, you don't need any Apex at all, but you can make use of these and many, many others like these. And these are relatively simple, but then you get really crazy powerful ones. Apex Web Service. Apex Web Service lets you make a variety of kinds of requests out of across the internet. So this Apex Web Service make REST request, all I'm doing here is I'm just getting the content of the in-some website, and I'm spitting it out into here. So this is the HTML that you get if you go here. Now, of course, if you call a REST web service, you can actually make a REST and you would get the JSON back. You would get whatever that web service calls back. So it seems like a really wow, this should just exist. In some ways it does. You could use Util HTTP to do exactly what this is doing. This right here encompasses about 100 lines of code if you do it yourself with Util HTTP. So your code reduction is phenomenal by making use of these kinds of things.
One other interesting point here. So I've worked at Oracle twice. You worked at Oracle, I think, a longer time ago than I recently went back. And when you work inside Oracle, you get a better understanding of how seriously they take Oracle database and how much work is involved in adding stuff to Oracle database. So you look at that Apex web request, Anton pointed out, you could use util http ... Now you could argue that the database team should have going back to util HTTP or created their own web request package, kind of like modernizing the internals. The problem is that wouldn't show up till like years from now, and then you have to install a new version of database. What we have with the Apex team is a dynamic, fast-moving organization building great code. They can spin this out, supported, fully tested, et cetera, way faster than we'd ever get it out of the Oracle database itself. So love it.
And you make a huge point here, Stephen, because this code works all the way back to the database version 12. In fact, probably even, I would bet it works on 11 and even 10. I don't remember exactly, but the newest versions of Apex work much farther back. So incredibly great point for these kinds of things. Another one, Apex LDAP. So Apex LDAP Authenticate, this is probably close to 200 lines of code if you're using the Util LDAP, DBMS LDAP calls. Here, I'm also throwing in this little utility, the Apex Escape LDAP DN. So it's going to appropriately escape any special characters that might be in here. So I can do this and see, is my password foo? Turns out, if I clear this out here and run it again, I should get a false over here. There it is, false. My password is not foo.
Show us what it is. Go ahead, type it in. Let's figure it out. I'm just kidding. Wait a minute, that was my master password for all of my websites.
So I mean, this is another really powerful one. You don't need anything but have the Apex engine, runtime engine installed. So a few really powerful ones. I'm going to show
everything we've looked at so far. You don't have to do any Apex development, no application builder, nothing. Even web requests. That's so fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, the web request is a huge one. This one, another really powerful one. This Apex Mail example, I took the code, I copied it right out of the documentation, straight out of the documentation. All I did here was change. Oh, in fact, I meant to change, but I didn't get around it. This right here, I have changed it in another place. But my point in showing this is going to fail. So when I do this one and I click here, you can see I got this error message. The procedure must be invoked from within an application session. And this is almost true. It's not true in that you don't actually have to be in an application session. You only have to have your security group ID set. So in this database schema, I can't set a security group ID. Remember, I checked here, I don't have any. So if I do join a database session that has an Apex workspace, I can run this code. So what I'll come over here, this is my Anton 2 schema. If I'm here, if I run this, it's like I actually have 2 workspaces. So all I have to do to make this work is essentially figure out any old workspace ID that I have access to. I set the ID right here, and then this code will actually work. So if I run this now, now I've done something. Well, okay, I'm not sure where. Oh, I think it's this right here. I started to play and add a little bit more and then get around to it. One more try. There, procedure successfully completed. This actually sent an email from the database engine to my email address from this other email address. And if I go over to my email, I'm confident it will be there right now, but I've got about 10,000 unread messages. So I'm going to not try to get there. So those are my demo, Stephen, of a bunch of them, but there are so many more.
How do you find out what's there?
Yeah, exactly. So the documentation is easy to get to. I'm gonna show you the quick link is apex.oracle.com/API. apex.oracle.com/API. It will redirect you to here. You can actually, if you have a particular version of Apex installed, I think you can do apex.oracle.com/API. I think like 18.1. I think this did not work, but that one didn't work. But if you just put the version in there of what you have, it will take you to your appropriate version as well. So here you have a huge number of libraries. And I mean, I can point out a few others that I think are amazing. Apex Data Parser. This, if you have blobs, you can, for example, this will tell you if it's an Excel document, it will tell you what worksheets are in the document. And given the worksheet, you can then actually parse the worksheet it'll parse that whole, the whole Excel worksheet. Amazing.
And again, a big thing for Apex is they go to people who are using Excel and say, stop using spreadsheets. In like 2 minutes, you can have an application running against that same data set. They had to build a whole bunch of code. They built it into SQL API. They gave it to us as well.
Yeah. I'll point out a couple other ones that I like. This DG Data Gen. There's a user interface in Apex that does all of this for you, that you can fill out all the parameters. But this add blueprint procedure will allow you, or blueprint from tables will allow you to create a blueprint of sample data and then actually generate that data into your tables. So if you have 10 tables that are all related by foreign keys, you can call this one routine, add blueprint from tables. It will come up with what it thinks is a pretty good estimation of what sample data should look like. And then you can actually call the next one, generate data with this blueprint, and it'll slam all that data. It'll slam 100,000 rows into your tables if you want. So if you want to generate sample data in a minute for 10 tables with 100,000 rows apiece, you can do it really, really quickly.
Do you need a workspace for this one?
You do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. You do need a workspace. Yes, you need a workspace for this one. Yes.
So we have a comment from Nils. I thought I'd put it up here so we can, this is something we already talked about. So the problem with these wrappers around Util TCP or HTTP is that when you want to access a server behind a load balancer where the URL differs from the host names in the certificate, you're forced to specify the host name.
Ooh, that's interesting to me. I've never had this. I've always been able to get around this problem.
So you remember running into it?
I've run into it, and I've always had a solution to it. So I'm not, when you want to access a server behind a load balancer where the URL differs from the host name in the certificate. Well, actually, I think the web service ones actually have some new features specifically around that. I'm going to pull up and see if I can find that just really quickly to see if it's there's the proxy override. Here we go. HTTPS host. I think that one is what I'm looking for. So this one, if you specify it, will match the certificate. So this is reasonably new. It might be a 21.2. So
Haniel comes to the rescue.
There
we go.
Haniel beat me to it. All right, thank you.
So by the way, if you're not doing active Apex development, you don't have to worry about version upgrades. You can install this latest version of Apex and be utilizing all this functionality in it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Haniel.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, perfect. So I do want to just point out a couple others in here. There was one here. I was going to point out the Apex string and string util. I think these have huge
Probably
capabilities.
the most generalized interest for
Yeah,
people.
and they're easy to use. There's stuff that people write all the time. Find email addresses, find email from. Just they're kinds of things that people are, I think, likely to use. As I mentioned, web service and LDAP are other ones that come into play. But I encourage people to just look at the expanse. I mean, each of these packages has a dozen or more individual routines within it. Many of them, probably a third of them, can be used without anything to do with Apex at all. Another third, you might need a workspace ID, and then a third or so, actually require you to be in there. But that's still.
And unfortunately, at this point, from what we were talking about before the session, it's not terribly well documented in each package which of those three categories it falls in. We may publish something about that. Actually, it'd be kind of cool to put together a script that just references one element in each one of the packages and traps a failure under different conditions. And we could actually just make it available to run anytime they want to see.
Right. Yeah. It would be great if right at the top they told you need, you don't need anything, security group ID, what it might be, but unfortunately we're not quite there. Any chance I can share my demo code?
Oh, yeah. Nils, come on. Jeez, really? All right. Well, we got to put an idea in for Apex. We need to accept a list of multiple. It might actually work that way right now with a comma delimited list.
Yeah. Well,
try it.
And Neil,
try that out. Can you do this with, can we have multiple comma delimited host names? Maybe you'll have the answer before we're done today.
And I'll point this out, and I suspect Niels knows it, but the apex.oracle.com/ideas app is where you can ask for new ideas, things that you might want to have them support. So I think that's a reasonable thing.
And a question from Fernando. Any chance you can share your demo code, Anton?
I can absolutely do that. I'll
figure
out how to do that afterwards.
So Live SQL is where I generally try to throw all of my code samples, Oracle Live SQL. Now that runs as an Apex app, so it seems like even the stuff that requires an Apex workspace, it'll work.
I think it will, yeah.
But I don't know if I doubt you can do Apex mail from Live SQL. That would be too dangerous. But anyway, we'll
then I would get a ton of test emails sent to me.
We'll have a blog post that goes with this session, and we'll make sure that wherever we put the code, we'll provide a link to it. Here's a question. Do you know of a function in the Apex APIs to get the diff of 2 JSON documents that you can feed into JSON merge patch?
That is really interesting.
Is there an Apex JSON package?
There is an Apex JSON package, and there's also Apex string.diff or string.util.diff, but the Apex string ones won't work the way you want them to, because JSON, and if you really want to do a diff between JSON, right? JSON is order independent. So if you have an array, it doesn't matter what order they're in and those kinds of things, then your diff isn't going to work. The string diff isn't going to work like that. I don't think Apex JSON has a diff.
I don't see it.
The interesting thing to me is you could write a select statement, but if it's nested JSON, I don't know of one, but
apex.oracle.com/ideas Nils, go for it.
Right. Yeah. I like that one though, because it's funny now that you mention it, I can see a lot of reasons why you would want it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even though I haven't personally run into it on my own. But,
okay. So, hey, it's 11:24. We don't want to keep people too long. Anything else you want to cover on the API and the elements?
I think just the key is apex.oracle.com/API, and go look.
Take a browse around. It's pretty, you probably see at a glance that many of them are, of course, specific to Apex, like Apex authorization.
Yeah. Right.
So, look for the more generic the name, the more likely it is it'll be helpful to you outside of context. All right. So hopefully that was really useful to you. Avoid the heavy lifting. See if there's code that somebody already built, ideally Oracle, because then it's supported. But of course, there's lots of other great data sources out there as well, like the Alexandria code utility on GitHub. So that's the end of the technical tip. As you know, I do a favorite cultural artifact of the week, and I've handed that off to Anton for this week. So Anton, what have you got for us? What really has changed your life?
So I have this right here is my Junior Ranger badge from the Sand Dunes National Park. Now, okay, so Sand Dunes National Park and most national parks within the US National Park System have this Junior Ranger program. It's really geared for, I don't know, ages 5 to 15, but there's no actual age limit. You go to the ranger station, you say, I'd like the Junior Ranger activity booklet. And then it's got a bunch of activities that you do about that national park. And I got to tell you, it's really A, it's fun, and B, it gives you something to look for. You know, just walking through Sand Dunes National Park, I might not have realized that there was only one mammal in the entire national sand dunes. It's the kangaroo rat. As it turns out, as I was walking along, I came across a mummified kangaroo rat way out there in the dunes, but I wouldn't have even known to look for it if I hadn't. So I really encourage folks to, regardless of your age, get your Junior Ranger badge or patch by completing the activities at your national park. Get out and see what you can see. I got 3 this last summer. Pretty proud.
Nice, right? And of course, even if you're older than 15, you could invite someone along, like your child or grandchild, who is in that age group, to be a junior ranger.
I brought my children, all over age 20, but.
And just as a reminder, one of my other strong feelings about being a parent is probably the best thing you can do with your children is get them out into the most wild areas you can find, the least human impacted areas, and let them experience the world as directly as they can. It will impact them. It will affect them for the rest of their lives. Strongly encourage that. Karen, yes, we are always young at heart. Our young hearts. Too bad the rest of us aren't staying young. All right. So thanks for that, Anton. And every week we give $25 to an organization. We used to put up 3 different organizations. Lately, because of the obvious crises in the world, we've just been deciding for ourselves. So I'm just going to decide again this week. We're going to give $25 to Pakistan flood relief, probably the Red Cross. They're still facing enormous challenges, and hopefully we can help them a little bit. All right. Any other questions, any comments we missed? I don't think so. Nils, thanks as always for your great comments and questions, and Haniel, your answers. So you'll see a blog post soon, and a video will be tweeted out. Thanks so much for joining us. By the way, if you have any other ideas for Feuertips you'd like to see, let me know on DM on Twitter or public tweet. Thanks, Anton, for joining us and showing us all that great stuff.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, everybody. Happy coding. Stay safe.